we are in the bonus module talking about theory. You know, if I brought my whiteboard and coffee, things are getting serious here. So let's discuss a little bit, because theory is important. Anything that has to do with songwriting, harmony, sight singing, any of that, you have to know the building blocks that are going to make up the songs in order to understand what's going on in the background. Now, I will tell you that when I first started singing and songwriting, I did not know theory, and I was just making it up as I went and picking random notes for my songs. And I remember the first song I ever wrote took me hours, and I was picking these random notes, not knowing that there was a pattern that a lot of people follow, that certain notes go together. In certain songs, there's something called a key, and it's like a family of notes that belong to, it's called a certain key of the song, so that you know normally it'll be 8 notes that you can choose from that'll be in a song. Now they can be high, they can be low, they can be all over the place. But once you start figuring out those patterns and you know the specific chords that people use for making different songs, you'll start to see the patterns, and it starts to get way easier and actually super fun. Now, it's kind of funny because whether you're Taylor Swift, whether you're Katy Perry, you're doing classical music, death metal, country, whatever it would be, they use sometimes a lot of similar patterns, which I think is super funny, and you just don't realize because it's in a different style. So I want to teach you some of those so you can start songwriting, you can start understanding more about what goes on beyond your music, behind your music. So when you want to do harmonies, you want to do other things along those lines. When you're trying to sit down with a new piece of music, you can understand better what's happening, which is great. A musician that is well-rounded is the best musician, if you ask me. Not that you can just sing, but now you also know how to write things, you'll know how to sound things out. And the better your ear is, the better musician that you are. So a lot of the things that we're going to talking about today, I'll show you some notes and different things along those lines, but it's also going to be training your ear. So prepare yourself for that. Now, for the newbies here, I'm going to just talk to you for a second. If you have already had theory training, so you're a little bit more advanced, stick with me for 1 minute and we'll get past some of this basic stuff, and then we can get to some of the more challenging fun things. So, but for those of you guys who have never had theory before, I want to just touch on the basics and the notes that there are in music. So in music, when you are coming up with any type of songs, anything like that, the main notes, okay, the music alphabet, we call it, starts on an A. Let's see if you can see it. A, B, C, just like the regular alphabet, D, E, F, and G. And then it stops. Okay, that's important, because then what will happen if you have a piano is it starts A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it just repeats again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So when you start all the way down here, that's an A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It starts again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and goes on and on and on and on. So that's important for you to know. Obviously, it's one of the basic things. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now, for us, because we're doing some basic things, we're going to be doing things in the key of C. Now, for those of you guys that I already lost, here's what that means. It's the notes starting on a C and going up from there. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then all the way up here, C. Now here's a slide so that you can see what that looks like on the piano. Notice there's 8 notes. So, especially when you're sight singing, we call these by number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Or if you wanted to sing the exact notes, sing these with me to saying the note names. So starting on a C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, so you might recognize those from some of our warm-ups. It's called a scale. All right, now those 8 notes, notice they're all white notes. You don't have any black notes involved. If you want to sit down and try and play these out, you can do that too. But let's also say it with the numbers for a second so you can hear it also and start associating it with the numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, when you start jumping around with sight singing, those numbers are going to be important because there's something called intervals where you're jumping from the 1 to the 2 or the 1 to the 3, where I want you to start recognizing what those different jumps sound like. Really important for your ear. Now, some people prefer when they do sight singing to do by do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's called solfege. And a lot of way that you can do that is you associate that name instead with the different notes. Now, I don't prefer to do that. I prefer to do it with the numbers so that you can actually see the jump of the interval. So if you're singing 1 to 5, you're actually doing 1, 5, and you're actually saying the 5, but also singing the 5 instead of singing do or mi or whatever else that would be. So if you're comfortable with that, I have that on the side as well. You can try singing that, but I prefer to do the numbers. So here is another slide. I would like you to see what that looks like with the actual notes on the line. Again, if you haven't done notes before or played an instrument, this can look a little scary, but don't be scared. It's just to get a visual so you can see that the notes are going up on the lines. You can also see there's 5 lines, and as you see the notes, the very first one where it says under 1, that's a C. See how there's a line going through it? Make a mental note, because when you're sight singing, you need to start recognizing the notes and when they're jumping and how they're moving. So see that first note, number 1, it's under do, is a C with a line through it. Now the next note up, see how it is under the line in a space. That one is a D. It's also, see how it's a 2. Then if you go to the next one, 3, that's going to be an E on the very first line. And then see how the next one is between the lines. So each of these notes go line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space. See how that works as they work their way up? That a note will have a line going through it, and then the next one will be in between the lines. That's really important for sight singing. Okay, so see how that looks when you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1 or 8. All right, that's really important. Okay, because what I would like us to do is I'm going to show you some of the tricks for how to remember which intervals are which, so that when I throw you a piece of music to sight sing, you'll be able to have an idea of where to go from. Now, but first, so there is, I call it the home base of any key. So say you're in the key of C, which that's what we're going to be in right now. Those are the notes that I just showed you. C to C is the key of C with all the notes in the middle. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now, there is something called intervals, and when you're starting in a key, the 1 of that key is always what key you're in. So if you're in the key of C, that's going to be your 1, your home base, I call it. So no matter what, it's just like you, whenever you leave the house, no matter what, you come back home normally at night, right? So same thing with songs. They might go other places. Sometimes they might even go into a different key with different notes, but they always come back to their home base. So a lot of times you have a song in the key of C. Here's your C, and you might go up to this. Like this, and you end on a C, and you hear that to resolve the song normally lands on that C. You can kind of tell that that's coming. So that's going to be important. That is your 1. Now for each of these intervals, I'm going to play them. Now there's really fun reminders to remember which is which. So look at this next slide, and I'm going to play each of these, and then we're going to do a little test in a second. I'm going to play different ones, and you're going to guess and see if you can figure out which is which. So first you'll notice that a minor second, which just means it's the closest notes you can possibly get. So it's going to be just a little half step up, and it sounds like this. It sounds like the Jaws theme song, if you hear that. That's Jaws right next to each other, right in a row. Do, do, do. That's a minor second, okay? Now a major second sounds like when you go up in the scale. Do, 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 do. Okay? So listen again, this is the major second. If you were singing do, dear, so do, dear, that's the very first one. Now a third, this is a major third, it's going to sound like our warm-up that we did, ha, 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 ha. The very first 2 steps there is a third. So 1, 3, hear that and sing it with me. 1, 3. Now, great job. The next one is my favorite one because it's really easy to hear. And it's a 4th, and it sounds like, here comes the bride. That is a 4th interval. So if you notice, I'm playing 1 to 4. 1, 4. Hear that? And now we're going to go up to a 5th, which is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. 1, 5, twinkle, twinkle. And the last one for now is going to be a sixth. So the sixth sounds like N, B, C. So let's sing that. 1, 6. So our next one is a seventh. It sounds like Maria from West Side Story. Maria. Or the Immigrant Song from Led Zeppelin. And the very last one we're going to do is an octave, and it sounds like Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Now here's the fun part. I'm going to give you a test. I'm going to play you an interval, and you can think in your head which one you think it is, and then I'll tell you the answer. So first, which one do you think you hear? The answer is second, that's Jaws. Now, the next one. Let's try another guy. This is one of the hardest ones to hear. That is a third for ha, 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 ha. Now try another one. That one is a fifth. Twinkle, twinkle, bum, bum, bum. All right, let's try another one. Let's try. That's a fourth. Here comes the bride. If you're guessing these correct, congratulations. If you're not, don't worry. This ear training takes a little bit of time. This took me a little bit to get, but the more and more you do it, the easier it gets. You're training your ear, and that's a complicated thing. How about this one? That one is the sixth. N, B, C. All right, let's do 3 more. That one is a second. Do, a dear. There's another one. That's a fifth. All right. One last one. That's a fourth. All right, good job. If you need to go back and practice those again and review them to yourself, go ahead. Do it as many times as you need to. There's tons of other little interval training things too online. You can just listen to different examples of people playing them and then try and guess them yourself to quiz yourself and get better and better. Now, that's important because when you're doing sight singing, you are going to need those. Now, here's an example of a sight singing piece of music. We're gonna try it. It's just gonna go up in a row. We're gonna start with a really basic one. Now for those of you guys again who are still learning music, don't be scared. We're just gonna really start on the first 5 notes, C, D, E, F, and G, okay? So, let me show you this guy. Here's our first 5 notes. Okay, we're gonna sing this for a second. C, D, E, F, G. Or if you've been following along, you can sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Try that with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's go back from the top. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Always have that home base in your mind. 1. So if you jump into a 5, you'll remember 1. That's what you're coming back to, okay? Let's sing that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, here's what I would like us to do next. Now we're going to do an example of what it sounds like to do some jumps, all right? We're going to skip around a little bit. We're going to do 1, 3, 5. It's the ha warm-up that we did if you remember from one of the earlier modules, but to watch it and to think of it in sight singing is a little bit different. Now, if you're trying to play this, it's going to be C, E, and G. But that's the visual for the 1, 3, 5. Okay, let's just sing it saying 1, 3, 5. Hear those intervals. 1, 3, 5. Now let's sing it up and back down. So 1, 3, 5, 3, 1. So if you've seen a piece of music, you see a skip like this where they're skipping the 2 or the 4. You'll know what it sounds like. 1, 3, and the more comfortable you are with that, the easier it'll be later on when you see it in other music, okay? So I'm just going to give us a really simple sight singing example, and we'll see if we can figure it out. This one is going to be in the key of C, so C is going to be your starting note. So it would sound like this is your starting note, and that'll be your 1. Now let's look at this together. Does this go in a row or does it skip? This is on the line, so what's this next one? It's just going to be the next one up, so that's going to be a 2. How about this one? If it just goes up to the next line, it's going to be in a row. So what we'll be singing is just that scale in a row. Let's see if you can do it first before you hear it. Hear it in your head and try and sing along. Now I'm going to play it and let's see if you're right. 1, 2, 3. Now, something that is important, I realize that we breeze past for some of you guys, and that is rhythm. So, rhythm is important. You might have noticed that on the line I had these notes that look like this that were colored in. Those guys are going to be one beat. Okay? So when you see those, you just sing one note. 1, like that. Now, if it's not colored in like this guy, boop, that's going to be held for 2 beats. So when you see it, it's going to be like 1, 2, where it's held. Okay? So that's going to be important in our sight singing examples. Whenever you first do sight singing, you do not have to necessarily worry about the rhythm. First thing you want to look at the notes. And then maybe the second time through, you can pay closer attention to the rhythm. Now, I want to give you one other sight singing example. And then we'll put some on the slides for you to test out and see if you can figure it out, okay? Again, this is very basic. It can get very, very complicated, jumps all over the place and changing keys and doing all sorts of stuff, but this is just a basic thing. I don't want to get people who are just starting this too confused. But for those of you who have done it a little bit before, I would like to give you a challenge. So let's look at this one. It might look very similar to what we just did. You might recognize that. Now let's put our numbers with it so that we can have an idea of what's happening. You have 1, next note up, right? 2, 3, and then a repeated note 3. Now remember, this is going to be held for 1, 2 beats, okay? So sing that in your head for a second. Your starting note is going to be C, and see if you can sound that out and sight sing it. And then I'll play it for you. That's your starting note. Now here we go. You ready? 1, 2. Again, let's say those numbers. 1, 2, 3. And this one's held for 1, 2. I realize that's a little confusing with that held guy with the different numbers. But just this has to do with the rhythm and not the actual number that you're playing. So one more time, here's the interval slide for you in case you need to write this down. And if you go on to the next video, there'll be some chances for you to practice even more complicated sight reading.